The Chamber of the Stars was a sight to behold. Crafted from the finest crystarium found deep within the mountains of Arendor, the walls shimmered with an ethereal glow, reflecting the light of distant galaxies. The ceiling was a dome of transparent quartz, offering an unobstructed view of the vast cosmos. It was within this hallowed hall that the High Council of Arendor gathered to deliberate matters of great importance, matters that could shape the future of their civilization. On this day, the chamber was filled with an air of anticipation, as the most revered women of Arendor took their places around a circular table made of obsidian, its surface polished to a mirror-like sheen. Each of these women, the finest leaders, scholars, and warriors Arendor had to offer, exuded an aura of power and grace. They were known throughout the galaxy for their unmatched beauty, towering strength, and sharp intellect. But today their minds were focused on a single, unfamiliar subject: Earth. At the head of the table sat the matriarch, Seraphina, a woman whose mere presence commanded respect. Her silvery hair, adorned with intricate braids, cascaded down her back, and her piercing blue eyes sparkled with wisdom accumulated over centuries. She had led Arendor through times of peace and conflict, and her leadership was unquestioned. As she looked around the table, she knew the decision they were about to make would not only impact their own world, but might also send ripples across the galaxy. "We are gathered here," Seraphina began, her voice resonating with authority, "to discuss an opportunity that has presented itself, a mission to Earth." A murmur rippled through the council. The name of the distant planet Earth had long been whispered in stories and songs. It was a world known for its diversity, for its inhabitants who were as varied as the colors of the dawn sky. But for all its mysteries, Earth had remained distant and uncharted by the people of Arendor, a subject of curiosity rather than direct interest. Until now. Seraphina continued, "For centuries, our knowledge of human men has been limited to second-hand tales and scattered reports. While we have excelled in our own advancements and established alliances with other civilizations, Earth has remained enigmatic. However, recent observations have sparked a renewed interest in understanding the unique characteristics and behaviors of human men." As she spoke, a holographic projection appeared in the center of the table, displaying images of Earth, as seen from space, a blue-green orb swirled with white clouds. The projection then zoomed in, revealing images of human men, captured by advanced Arendor technology. They were diverse, their appearances ranging from the pale-skinned and dark-haired to those with golden or ebony skin, their bodies varying from lean to powerfully muscular. The council members leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the images. For all their strength and beauty, the women of Arendor were accustomed to a certain homogeneity among their male counterparts on Arendor and allied planets. The diversity displayed before them was both fascinating and puzzling. One council member, Lyra, a scholar known for her vast knowledge of alien species, spoke up. "We have always prided ourselves on our understanding of strength and beauty. Yet, here is a species that defies our conventional wisdom. Human men exhibit a wide range of physical traits, yet they all seem to possess a certain allure. We must understand why this is so." "Indeed," added Commander Thalassa, a warrior of great renown. Her voice was deep, with a commanding edge that had seen her lead many victorious battles. "Their muscular builds are impressive, particularly those who engage in regular physical conditioning. It speaks to a resilience and dedication that we value in our own warriors. But it is not just their physicality that intrigues me. Their behavior, gentle, protective, and yet fiercely determined, demands closer study." Seraphina nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "That is precisely why I have brought this proposal to the council. The exploration of Earth and its inhabitants, particularly the men, is not just an opportunity to learn about another species. It is an opportunity to learn more about ourselves, about our own values, our own strengths, and perhaps even our own vulnerabilities." The chamber fell silent as the weight of her words settled over the council. This was more than just a mission, it was a journey of self-discovery, a chance to challenge their understanding of what it meant to be strong, beautiful, and connected. Not all were immediately convinced, however. Nyx, a council member known for her skepticism, raised a hand, her expression cautious. "While the idea is intriguing, we must also consider the risks. Earth is a planet with its own complexities, political, social, and environmental. We have little first-hand knowledge of how their societies function or how they might react to our presence. Is it wise to engage with them directly?" Seraphina turned her gaze to Nyx, acknowledging the validity of her concerns. Your caution is warranted, Nix. However, we do not intend to make our presence known to the broader population. This will be a covert mission, with our operatives blending into human society. Our technology will allow them to assume human appearances and move undetected. The goal is to observe, interact, and gather information, not to interfere. Another voice joined the conversation. Isolde, a diplomat with extensive experience in interplanetary relations. If we approach this with the right balance of caution and curiosity, we could gain valuable insights not just into human men, but into the potential for future alliances. Earth is on the cusp of significant technological and social advancements. They are at a crossroads, much like we were centuries ago. Understanding them now could be crucial for establishing a future dialogue. Serafina listened as the debate unfolded, weighing each perspective. The council members were divided between those who saw the potential for great knowledge and those who feared the unknowns that lay ahead. But underlying it all was a shared curiosity, a desire to learn, to explore, to connect. After hours of discussion, the time came for a decision. Serafina stood, her presence once again commanding the attention of all in the chamber. We have heard many arguments today, both for and against this mission, she began. But let us not forget who we are. We are the women of Arendor, a people known not just for our strength, but for our courage, our wisdom, and our thirst for knowledge. The unknown should not be a source of fear, but of opportunity. It is through exploration that we grow, that we evolve, that we become greater than we were before. She paused, allowing her words to resonate through the chamber. Therefore, I propose that we proceed with the mission. Let us send our finest to Earth not as conquerors, but as explorers. Let us seek to understand, to learn, and perhaps to build bridges that span the stars. The council chamber was silent for a moment as the weight of her words hung in the air. Then, one by one, the council members nodded in agreement, their expressions resolute. The decision was made. Serafina smiled, a rare and gentle expression on her usually stern face. Very well. We shall begin preparations immediately. The mission will be led by Captain Viola, one of our most capable warriors and a woman of great wisdom. She will be accompanied by a team of our best and brightest, each chosen for their unique skills and insights. Captain Viola, who had remained silent throughout the debate, rose to her feet. She was a woman of striking presence, with deep green eyes that seemed to see beyond the surface of things, and a physique that spoke of both power and agility. Her reputation as a warrior was unmatched, but it was her sharp mind and diplomatic skills that had earned her the respect of the council. I accept this responsibility with honor, Viola said, her voice steady and confident. I will lead our team with the utmost care and diligence. We will learn what we can about the men of Earth and return with knowledge that will benefit all of Arendor. Serafina nodded approvingly. Then it is settled. The mission to Earth begins. May the stars guide you, Captain Vela, and may you return with the wisdom we seek. The council members stood, signaling the end of the meeting. As they began to file out of the chamber, Serafina remained behind, gazing up at the stars through the crystal dome. Her thoughts were filled with the possibilities that lay ahead not just for the mission, but for the future of Arendor. She knew that this journey to Earth was more than a scientific expedition. It was the beginning of something much larger, something that could redefine their understanding of strength, beauty, and connection. And deep within her, there was a sense that this mission would not just change how they saw Earth, but how they saw themselves. As the stars twinkled above, Serafina whispered a silent prayer to the cosmos. May our paths be illuminated, and may we find the strength to embrace whatever truths we uncover. And with that, the High Matriarch of Arendor turned and left the chamber, her mind already focused on the preparations that lay ahead. The journey to Earth had begun. The journey from Arendor to Earth was not a simple one. It required the precise calibration of their advanced spacecraft, the Astris, to navigate the interstellar currents that separated the two worlds. The Astris was a marvel of Arendor engineering, sleek and formidable, with a hull that shimmered like liquid metal under the light of distant stars. Its propulsion system, powered by quantum plasma drives, allowed it to traverse the vast distances between planets in mere days. But as the ship entered the gravitational pull of Earth, the crew of Arendor women braced themselves for a very different experience. The descent through Earth's atmosphere was both exhilarating and tense. The ship's exterior heated to a glowing red as it cut through the thickening air, leaving a trail of ionized particles in its wake. Inside the Astris, The women felt the change in gravity as the ship adjusted to Earth's pull, a sensation that made their stomachs lurch slightly despite their extensive training. Captain Vela stood at the helm, her gaze focused on the holographic display in front of her. The blue and green orb of Earth grew larger by the second, the curvature of the planet becoming more pronounced as they neared their destination. Her fingers moved deftly over the controls, making micro-adjustments to the ship's trajectory to ensure a smooth entry. Behind her, the rest of the crew monitored their stations, their expressions a mix of concentration and anticipation. "Prepare for final approach," Vela commanded, her voice steady. "We will be landing in a remote region to avoid detection." The Astras's navigation systems had pinpointed a secluded area deep within the forests of the Pacific Northwest, a place chosen for its dense vegetation and minimal human activity. As the ship descended, the lush green canopy of trees came into view, the vibrant landscape in stark contrast to the sterile environment of the spacecraft. The women of Erindor had studied Earth's biomes extensively before their journey, but seeing it firsthand was an entirely different experience. With a soft thud, the Astras touched down on a patch of soft earth, the landing pad sinking slightly into the ground. The ship's hull shimmered briefly before its exterior systems activated, cloaking it in a holographic projection that rendered it invisible to any prying eyes. The mission was now officially underway. The airlock hissed open, and Captain Vela was the first to step out onto the planet's surface. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, a heady mixture that was foreign yet strangely invigorating. The gravity was slightly lighter than that of Erindor, giving Vela a subtle feeling of buoyancy as she moved forward. One by one, the other members of the crew followed her out of the ship. There was Commander Thalassa, whose muscular frame moved with the grace of a predator, Lyra, the scholar with her keen, analytical eyes, Isolde, the diplomat, who took in the surroundings with an expression of serene curiosity, and several others, each chosen for their unique skills and perspectives. The forest around them was alive with sound. The rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant calls of birds, and the occasional snap of twigs underfoot created a symphony of nature that was unlike anything they had heard on Erindor. For a moment the women stood in silence, absorbing the raw beauty of this alien world. "This place is," vibrant Lyra murmured, her voice tinged with awe. "The life here is so varied." Vela nodded in agreement. "It is as we expected, but experiencing it firsthand is something else entirely. Let's proceed with caution. We need to set up a base of operations and begin our reconnaissance as soon as possible." The crew immediately got to work, their movements efficient and practiced. They established a temporary base within the confines of the Astras, using its advanced technology to maintain contact with Erindor, while shielding their activities from detection by any of Earth's satellites or monitoring systems. The ship's sensors were calibrated to scan the surrounding area, mapping out the terrain and identifying any nearby human settlements. Vela watched as the crew completed their tasks with precision. She could sense the underlying excitement in each of them. This mission was more than just an exploration, it was a chance to discover something truly new. And yet, she knew that this excitement had to be tempered with caution. They were, after all, in uncharted territory. With the base secured and preliminary scans complete, the time had come for the crew to venture out and observe human men up close. The mission protocols called for careful integration into human society, using advanced holographic technology to disguise themselves as human women. This technology, developed on Erindor, was capable of mimicking not only the physical appearance of Earth's inhabitants, but also the subtle nuances of their behavior. The crew divided into small teams, each assigned to different locations where they could observe and interact with human men. Captain Vela, along with Lyra and Thalassa, chose a nearby town as their starting point, a small, rustic place nestled at the edge of the forest, where the pace of life was slower and the risk of discovery lower. The town, surrounded by rolling hills and dense woods, had a charm that was both quaint and unfamiliar. As the women entered, their appearances seamlessly altered to blend in with the local populace. Vela's striking green eyes and athletic build were transformed into the more subdued appearance of a tall, auburn-haired woman with a toned yet non-threatening physique. Lyra, who had always been known for her scholarly demeanor, now appeared as a demure brunette with an air of quiet intelligence, while Thalassa's formidable presence was softened into that of a strong, yet approachable woman with dark hair and warm brown eyes. As they walked through the town, they were met with curious glances from the locals, but nothing that suggested suspicion. The women had studied human social behaviors extensively, and they moved with an ease that belied their alien origins. They visited a local cafe, a gym, and the town square, all the while observing the men around them. It was in the gym that the women had their first close encounter with human men. The gym was a modest establishment filled with the sounds of clanking weights and the rhythmic thud of footsteps on treadmills. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and effort, a testament to the physical dedication of those within. Vela, Lyra, and Thalassa entered the gym, their senses immediately heightened by the environment. The men here were engaged in various forms of exercise, their bodies straining with the effort of lifting weights, running, and practicing martial arts. The Arendor women had seen images and videos of such activities, but witnessing them in person was a different experience altogether. As they observed, it became clear that human men exhibited a wide range of physical abilities and body types. Some were lean and agile, their muscles defined but not overly pronounced. Others were bulkier, their physiques sculpted through years of training and discipline. The diversity was fascinating, and it spoke to a level of individuality that was less common on Arendor, where physical perfection was more uniformly defined. Vela's attention was drawn to a group of men engaged in a sparring session. They moved with a fluidity and precision that reminded her of the warriors of Arendor, yet there was something different, something more primal in their movements. The men were strong, yes, but their strength was coupled with a kind of vulnerability that intrigued her. They fought not just with their bodies, but with a fierce determination that came from within, a drive to prove themselves, to push beyond their limits. Thalassa, too, was captivated. As a warrior herself, she recognized the discipline and dedication required to achieve such physical prowess. But what intrigued her more was the camaraderie she observed among the men. They encouraged each other, offered advice, and shared in each other's victories and defeats. It was a form of bonding that transcended mere physicality, a connection that spoke of a deeper, emotional strength. Lyra, meanwhile, was fascinated by the way the men interacted with one another outside of their training. She noticed how they laughed, joked, and supported each other, their behavior reflecting a complex mix of confidence and humility, competitiveness and camaraderie. It was clear that these men valued not just physical strength but also intelligence, humor, and emotional connection. At one point, a man approached the trio, his expression friendly and curious. He was tall, with dark hair and a muscular build that suggested years of physical training. His blue eyes sparkled with a mix of confidence and warmth, and he offered a polite smile as he spoke. "Hi there," he said, his voice deep but friendly. "I don't think I've seen you around before. New to town." Vela, who had been trained extensively in human languages and social cues, returned the smile with ease. "Yes, we're just passing through. Decided to stop by and check out the local gym. It's quite impressive." The man chuckled, glancing around the gym with a hint of pride. "It's not bad, especially for a small town like this. I'm Jack, by the way." "Nice to meet you," Jack, Vela replied, extending her hand in the traditional human greeting. "I'm Val. This is Lila, and that's Tessa." She introduced Lyra and Thalassa by their human aliases, their identities carefully chosen to blend in seamlessly. Jack shook her hand, his grip firm but not overpowering. "Well, Val, if you ever need a spotter or some tips, just let me know. I've been working out here for years." Vela nodded, her interest piqued by the casual offer. "I might take you up on that. We're just here to observe today, but it's always good to learn from someone experienced." As Jack moved on to continue his workout, Vela exchanged a glance with Lyra and Thalassa. The interaction had been brief, but it had provided valuable insight into the behavior of human men. Jack had been confident but not arrogant, friendly but not intrusive. It was a balance that they found intriguing, an indication of the complex social dynamics at play. After spending several hours observing the gym and interacting with its patrons, the trio returned to the Astris under the cover of night. The forest was quiet, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the occasional call of a nocturnal animal. The women moved swiftly and silently, their senses attuned to the environment around them. Back aboard the ship, the team convened in the central command room to discuss their findings. The room was dimly lit, with a large holographic display in the center, showing the data they had gathered during the day. Lyra was the first to speak. "The men we observed today exhibit a fascinating range of behaviors and physical traits. There is a strong emphasis on physical fitness and camaraderie, but also a deep respect for intelligence and humor. Their interactions suggest that they value both strength and emotional connection. The Lhasa nodded in agreement. I was particularly impressed by their resilience and determination. The way they push themselves in training is admirable, and it speaks to a drive that goes beyond mere physical appearance. There is a strength of character there that I did not expect. Vela listened to their observations, her mind already working on the next steps. Our first encounter has provided us with valuable insights, but it is only the beginning. We need to continue our observations, expanding our interactions to different environments and social settings. The more we learn, the better we can understand the complexities of human men. She paused, her gaze focused on the holographic display. Tomorrow, we will visit other locations, places where we can observe not just physical behavior, but emotional and intellectual interactions as well. We need to gather as much data as possible before making any conclusions. The crew nodded in agreement, their excitement tempered by the seriousness of their mission. They had only just begun to scratch the surface of what Earth and its inhabitants had to offer, and they were eager to delve deeper. As the meeting adjourned, Vela stood alone in the command room, her thoughts drifting back to the interactions she had witnessed that day. There was something about these human men that intrigued her, something that went beyond mere physical attraction. It was as if they held a mirror up to her own values and beliefs, challenging her to see the world and herself in a new light. For the first time, Vela felt a flicker of uncertainty. She had always been confident in her strength, her leadership, her ability to navigate any situation. But here, on this unfamiliar planet, she was beginning to realize that strength came in many forms, some of which she had yet to fully understand. As she gazed out at the night sky through the ship's viewport, the stars twinkling above the forest, Vela made a silent vow. She would not only complete this mission but do so with an open mind and heart. She would learn all she could about the men of Earth, not just for the sake of Arendor, but for her own growth as well. The journey had only just begun, and already it was proving to be more than she had ever anticipated. The next morning, as dawn broke over the forest canopy, the women of Arendor gathered in the Astras's transformation chamber, a room designed to blend their advanced technology with the subtlety required for their mission on Earth. The chamber itself was sleek and futuristic, its walls lined with consoles that hummed softly, glowing with the soft light of bioluminescent crystals. In the center of the room stood a series of circular platforms, each surrounded by a halo of light that flickered with potential energy. The women took their places on these platforms, preparing for the process that would alter their appearances and allow them to move seamlessly among the human population. The technology they were about to use was among Arendor's most sophisticated, a blend of holographic projection and molecular restructuring that could transform their physical forms down to the finest detail. It was not just about changing their looks, it was about becoming someone else entirely, at least in the eyes of those around them. Captain Vela stepped onto her platform, her expression focused. She had used this technology before, but never in such a sustained and personal way. Today she would not just wear the disguise of Val, the auburn-haired woman she had briefly assumed the day before she would become her, inhabiting the identity fully as they moved deeper into Earth society. "Are we ready?" Vela asked, her voice calm but authoritative. The other women nodded in response, their expressions reflecting a mix of determination and anticipation. They had all been carefully trained for this, but there was still an element of the unknown that added a layer of tension to the moment. Vela activated the console in front of her, initiating the transformation process. The platform beneath her began to hum, and the halo of light around her flared to life. A soft, tingling sensation spread across her skin as the molecular restructuring took effect, followed by the more disorienting shift of the holographic overlay. In seconds, the process was complete. Vela looked down at her hands, now those of a human woman slightly smaller, with the telltale lines and textures of Earth's inhabitants. She could feel the subtle differences in her body, the lighter frame, the altered muscle distribution, even the slight change in the way she perceived the world through her human senses. It was a strange but not unpleasant sensation, like wearing a perfectly tailored suit that was not her own. She turned to the others, who had undergone similar transformations. Lyra had become Lila, her scholarly demeanor now wrapped in the guise of a petite brunette with an intelligent gaze. Thalassa was now Tessa, her powerful presence softened into the appearance of a strong yet approachable woman with dark hair and an athletic build. Each woman inspected her new form with a mixture of curiosity and professionalism, ensuring that every detail was perfect. They were no longer the formidable warriors and scholars of Arendor, they were now human women, ready to immerse themselves in Earth's society. Vela smiled, a small but genuine expression. "Let's make this count," she said, her voice now carrying the slight inflection of her new identity. The women nodded in agreement, their resolve solidifying. The true mission was about to begin. Integration into human society. The team's next destination was the nearby city of Seattle, a bustling urban center, known for its diverse population and vibrant culture. It was the perfect place for the Arendar women to blend in while observing a wide range of human behaviors and interactions. The city offered a stark contrast to the quiet, rural town they had visited the day before, providing them with the opportunity to study the complexities of human society on a larger scale. As the women arrived in Seattle, they were immediately struck by the energy of the city. The streets were alive with activity, people of all backgrounds moving purposefully through the urban landscape. The air was filled with the sounds of car engines, distant conversations, and the occasional burst of laughter. It was a sensory overload compared to the serenity of Arendor, but the women adapted quickly, their training kicking in as they navigated the bustling streets. Their first stop was a popular cafe in the heart of the city, a place known for its eclectic clientele and relaxed atmosphere. The cafe was a hub of social interaction, where people from all walks of life came to relax, work, and converse. It was here that the women would begin their deeper exploration of human behavior, observing not just the men but the dynamics between all the people who frequented the establishment. As they entered the cafe, Vila, now fully inhabiting the persona of Val, took in the scene with a practiced eye. The space was warm and inviting, with rustic wooden furniture and walls lined with bookshelves. The air was thick with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, mingling with the scent of baked goods and the subtle fragrance of flowers in vases on the tables. The lighting was soft, creating an intimate ambience that encouraged conversation. The women chose a table near the window, where they could observe the ebb and flow of customers without drawing attention to themselves. Vila, Lila, and Tessa settled into their roles seamlessly, ordering drinks and engaging in casual conversation, just like any other group of friends meeting for a coffee. But beneath the surface, their minds were alert, analyzing every detail of their surroundings. It wasn't long before they began to notice the subtle social cues that defined human interactions. There were the regulars who exchanged familiar greetings with the baristas and each other, their conversations punctuated by shared laughter and inside jokes. Then there were the newcomers, who approached the counter with a slight hesitation, their eyes scanning the menu as they tried to navigate the unfamiliar territory. Some people sat alone, absorbed in their work or lost in thought, while others engaged in animated discussions, their voices rising and falling with the intensity of their emotions. What intrigued the Arendar women most, however, were the interactions between the men and women in the cafe. There was a certain dance to these exchanges, a give and take that was both subtle and complex. The women noticed how the men often displayed a blend of confidence and attentiveness, offering compliments or making jokes to break the ice. The women, in turn, responded with smiles, laughter, or a playful challenge, creating a dynamic that was as much about mutual respect as it was about attraction. At one point, a man approached their table, offering a friendly smile. He was tall, with sandy blonde hair and a laid-back demeanor that matched the cafe's atmosphere. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his tone casual but polite. Vela, maintaining her role as Val, smiled in return. "Not at all," she replied, gesturing to the empty chair. The man took a seat, setting down his cup of coffee. "Thanks. I'm Derek, by the way. I don't usually do this, but you all look like you were having a good time, and I figured, why not?" Vila noted the ease with which Derek introduced himself, his approach neither overly assertive nor hesitant. It was clear he was comfortable in social situations, and his relaxed demeanor put those around him at ease. "We're just enjoying the city," Vila said, her voice warm. "I'm Val, and these are my friends, Lila and Tessa." Derek nodded to Lyra and Thalassa, who returned his greeting with polite smiles. "Nice to meet you all. So are you visiting, or are you locals?" "Visiting, Lyra," now Lila answered, her tone light and conversational. "We're exploring different parts of the city, getting a feel for the culture here." Derek's eyes lit up with interest. "Seattle's a great place for that. There's a lot to see and do, and the people here are pretty friendly. If you're into music, there's a jazz club not too far from here that's worth checking out. The conversation flowed easily, with Derek sharing insights about the city and the women asking questions that allowed them to delve deeper into his perspective. Through this interaction, they learned not just about the city but also about the values and interests that shaped Derek's life. He spoke with enthusiasm about the local music scene, his passion for hiking in the nearby mountains, and his love of community events that brought people together. As the conversation continued, Vela observed the subtle ways in which Derek expressed himself, his choice of words, his body language, the way he maintained eye contact while speaking. It was clear that he valued connection and authenticity, traits that resonated with the Arundel women's own values. Yet, there was also a certain vulnerability in the way he spoke about his experiences, a willingness to share personal stories that hinted at a depth of character they had not often encountered in their interactions with men from other planets. When Derek eventually excused himself to leave, the women thanked him for his company, genuinely appreciating the insights he had provided. As he walked away, Vela turned to her companions, her expression thoughtful. "He's a good example of what we've been observing," she said quietly. "Confidence balanced with approachability, intelligence paired with a sense of humor. There's a complexity to human interactions that we're only beginning to understand." Thalassa nodded in agreement. "And it's not just about the surface-level traits. There's an emotional depth here, a willingness to connect on a personal level. It's refreshing, in a way." Lyra, ever the analyst, added, "What stands out to me is the way they value individuality. Each person brings something unique to the table, and that diversity seems to be celebrated rather than suppressed. It's a strength that I think we can learn from." Vela leaned back in her chair, taking in the bustling cafe around them. "We have much more to learn," she said, her voice carrying a note of resolve. "But this is a good start. Let's continue our observations in different settings. We need to see how these interactions play out in various contexts, workplaces, social gatherings, even in more intimate environments." The women agreed, their minds already shifting to the next phase of their mission. They finished their drinks and left the cafe, blending back into the flow of the city as they continued their exploration. As the days turned into weeks, the Arundel women's integration into Earth's society deepened. Their mission, which had begun as a scientific exploration, was gradually evolving into something more personal, more complex. The initial curiosity that had driven them to study human men was now intertwined with a burgeoning sense of connection, a connection that was growing stronger with each new interaction. Captain Vela, Lyra, and Thalassa, along with the other members of the team, found themselves drawn to the men they encountered, not just as subjects of study, but as individuals with whom they could form genuine relationships. The more they learned about these men, their struggles, their triumphs, their hopes and fears, the more they saw the common threads that bound them together, despite the vast differences between their worlds. Vela, in particular, found herself increasingly intrigued by Derek, the man she had met at the cafe. What had started as a casual encounter was slowly developing into something deeper. Their paths crossed frequently, and each meeting left her with a sense of anticipation and curiosity. There was something about Derek, his quiet confidence, his easygoing nature, the way he seemed to take life in stride, that resonated with her on a level she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just his physical appearance, though she couldn't deny the appeal of his strong build and warm smile. It was the way he carried himself, the way he spoke with a thoughtful consideration that suggested a depth of character she found intriguing. He was open and approachable, yet there was a hint of mystery about him, a sense that he had seen and experienced more than he let on. One evening, Vela still in her human guise, as Val found herself sitting across from Derek in a cozy corner of a bustling restaurant. The soft glow of candlelight illuminated their faces as they talked, the noise of the surrounding diners fading into the background. The conversation flowed easily, moving from light-hearted topics to more serious discussions, and Vela found herself sharing more about herself, albeit in the context of her assumed identity, than she had intended. "So what brought you to Seattle?" Derek asked, his eyes fixed on her with genuine interest. "You mentioned you're just visiting, but what made you choose this city?" Vela hesitated for a moment, carefully considering her response. The truth, of course, was something she couldn't reveal, but she had become adept at weaving her real experiences into the fabric of her human identity. "I've always been interested in exploring new places," she said finally, her voice thoughtful. "Seattle seemed like a good place to start, a city with a lot of history, a diverse culture, and a strong connection to nature. It's been eye-opening." Derek nodded, taking a sip of his drink. I can see that. Seattle has a way of getting under your skin, it's more than just a city, it's a place where people come to find themselves, to figure out what they really want out of life. Vela found herself nodding in agreement, though she knew her reasons for being here were far more complex. And what about you, she asked, steering the conversation back to him. Have you found what you're looking for? Derek smiled, a hint of something wistful in his expression. I think so, or at least I'm getting closer. I've been here for a few years now, and it's given me a lot of time to think about what really matters to me. I've learned that it's not just about where you are, but who you're with and how you choose to spend your time. His words struck a chord with Vela, reminding her of the reasons she had undertaken this mission in the first place. It wasn't just about gathering data or understanding human men, it was about connecting with them, learning from them, and perhaps even discovering new facets of herself in the process. As the evening progressed, Vela found herself opening up even more, sharing stories from her life on Arendor carefully framed as experiences from a distant place, far removed from the realities of Earth. She spoke of the challenges she had faced as a leader, the responsibilities that weighed on her, and the constant pressure to be strong, both physically and emotionally. Derek listened intently, his gaze never leaving her face. When she finished, he reached across the table and gently took her hand in his. It sounds like you've been through a lot, he said softly, but you've also accomplished so much. I can see that strength in you, Val, and I admire it. Vela felt a warmth spread through her at his words, a feeling that was both comforting and disconcerting. She wasn't used to this vulnerability, this openness. On Arendor, strength was about control, about maintaining a facade of invincibility. But here, with Derek, she was beginning to realize that strength could also mean letting down her guard, allowing herself to be seen, flaws and all. I appreciate that, she replied, her voice just above a whisper. But there's more to me than just strength. There are parts of me that I'm still figuring out, parts that I'm not sure how to navigate. Derek's grip on her hand tightened slightly, a gesture of reassurance. That's okay, we're all figuring things out, one step at a time, and sometimes it helps to have someone to walk that path with. Vela looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity in them. She knew that their paths were worlds apart, literally, but in that moment, she couldn't deny the connection that was forming between them. It was something deeper than mere attraction, it was a bond that transcended the boundaries of their respective species, a shared understanding that was growing stronger with each passing day. Lyra and the intellectual connection. While Vela was navigating her deepening bond with Derek, Lyra, disguised as Lila, found herself drawn to another type of connection, one that was rooted in intellectual curiosity and mutual respect. She had always been the most cerebral of the group, her mind constantly seeking new knowledge, new ideas to explore. And in a city like Seattle, with its vibrant academic and cultural scene, she had no shortage of opportunities to engage with like-minded individuals. It was during a lecture at a local university that Lyra first met Ethan, a professor of anthropology with a keen interest in ancient civilizations. The lecture had been about the evolution of human societies, a topic that fascinated Lyra, given her own background in the history and cultures of various planets. She had attended the lecture out of curiosity, but she hadn't expected to find herself so captivated by the speaker. Ethan was in his mid-30s, with sandy brown hair that was slightly tousled and glasses that gave him a scholarly yet approachable look. He spoke with passion and enthusiasm, his words painting vivid pictures of ancient societies and the lessons they held for the modern world. There was an energy about him, a thirst for knowledge that resonated with Lyra on a profound level. After the lecture, Lyra approached Ethan, eager to discuss some of the ideas he had presented. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, moving from the topic of ancient civilizations to broader philosophical questions about the nature of human progress and the meaning of cultural identity. Ethan was impressed by Lyra's insights, and she was equally intrigued by his perspective, which blended rigorous academic analysis with a deep appreciation for the complexities of human experience. Over the next few weeks, Lyra and Ethan met regularly, sometimes for coffee, other times for long walks through the city's parks. Their discussions covered a wide range of topics, from history and science to art and literature. Each conversation was a dance of ideas, a meeting of minds that challenged and inspired them both. For Lyra, these interactions were more than just intellectually stimulating, they were also emotionally fulfilling in a way she hadn't expected. She found herself looking forward to their meetings, not just for the exchange of ideas but for the connection she felt with Ethan. He was someone who understood her need for knowledge, who shared her curiosity about the world, and who valued her opinions as much as she valued his. One afternoon, as they sat on a bench overlooking the city's skyline, Ethan turned to Lyra with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Lila, I've met a lot of people in my life, but you're different. There's something about the way you think, the way you see the world that's unlike anyone else I've encountered." Lyra felt a flutter of emotion at his words, a mix of pride and vulnerability. "I could say the same about you," she replied, her voice tinged with warmth. "You have a way of making complex ideas accessible, of finding meaning in places others might overlook. It's refreshing." Ethan smiled, a genuine, open expression that made her heart skip a beat. "I'm glad you think so. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Lila. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of what we can learn from each other." Lyra nodded, her mind racing with the implications of his words. She knew that she couldn't fully reveal her true identity to Ethan, but that didn't diminish the significance of the connection they were forming. It was a bond built on mutual respect and shared intellectual curiosity, and it was becoming increasingly important to her. As they continued to talk, Lyra realized that she was experiencing something she had never felt before, a sense of belonging, of being truly understood by someone outside of her own world. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, a reminder of the power of human connections and the potential they held to bridge even the widest of gaps. Thalassa and the physical bond. While Vela and Lyra were exploring the emotional and intellectual aspects of their connections with human men, Thalassa, disguised as Tessa, was drawn to a different type of bond, one rooted in the physical and the primal. As a warrior, Thalassa had always valued strength, discipline, and physical prowess. On Arendor, these traits were revered, and she had spent her life honing her body and mind to become one of the most formidable fighters in her world. On Earth, Thalassa found herself intrigued by the way human men expressed their own physicality. She had observed them in the gym, pushing themselves to their limits, training with a determination that mirrored her own. But what fascinated her even more was the way these men used their bodies not just for combat or physical labor, but as a means of connection, of expressing themselves in ways that went beyond words. One evening, Thalassa decided to explore this aspect of human interaction more deeply. She signed up for a mixed martial arts class at a local gym, eager to test her skills against human opponents and to experience firsthand the way they approached physical challenges. The class was intense, filled with a diverse group of men and women who were all there for different reasons, some for fitness, others for self-defense, and a few for the sheer love of the sport. Thalassa quickly established herself as a force to be reckoned with. Her natural strength, combined with her years of training, made her a formidable opponent, even in her disguised form. But what surprised her was the way the men in the class responded to her. Rather than being intimidated or resentful of her abilities, they welcomed the challenge, pushing themselves harder to match her skill level. There was a camaraderie in their interactions, a mutual respect that Thalassa found both satisfying and intriguing. One man in particular stood out to her, a tall, broad-shouldered fighter named Alex. He was skilled, disciplined, and unafraid to go toe-to-toe with her, even when it was clear that she had the upper hand. Their sparring sessions were intense, filled with a combination of raw power and precise technique. But what intrigued Thalassa even more was the way Alex approached each match not as a competition, but as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to connect. After one particularly grueling session, Thalassa and Alex sat together on the edge of the mat, catching their breath. The gym was quiet, the other participants having left for the evening, leaving the two of them alone in the dimly lit space. "You're incredible," Tessa Alex said, his voice filled with admiration. "I've never met anyone who fights like you do. It's like you're in a different league." Thalassa smiled, wiping the sweat from her brow. "I've had a lot of training," she replied modestly, "but you're not so bad yourself. You've got a lot of heart." Alex chuckled, leaning back against the wall. "I guess that's what it takes, right? Heart. Strength is important, but without heart, it's just empty power." Thalassa considered his words, realizing that they echoed something she had long believed herself. On Arendor, strength was revered, but it was the heart, the will, the drive to protect and connect that truly made a warrior. And here, in this human gym, she was seeing that same principle in action. As they sat in companionable silence, Thalassa felt a shift in her perception of Alex. He was more than just a skilled fighter, he was someone who understood the deeper meaning of strength, someone who valued the connection between body and spirit. It was a perspective that resonated with her, and it made her see him in a new light. "I've been thinking," Alex said after a moment, breaking the silence. "There's something about the way you fight, the way you carry yourself, that's different. It's like you're not just here to train, you're here to learn, to experience something new." Thalassa nodded, appreciating his insight. "You're right," she admitted. "I'm here to push myself to understand what it means to be strong in a new way. And I've learned a lot from sparring with you." Alex's smile was warm, genuine. "Well, I'm glad I could help. And I've learned a lot from you too, Tessa. You've shown me that strength isn't just about power, it's about connection, about understanding what drives you." Thalassa felt a surge of respect and admiration for Alex. He wasn't just a fighter, he was someone who understood the deeper meaning of strength, someone who valued the bond that could be formed through physical connection. It was a revelation that deepened her appreciation for the human experience and made her even more determined to continue her mission with an open mind and heart. Conflict of emotions. As the Arendor women's relationships with human men deepened, they found themselves grappling with a new and unexpected challenge: the conflict between their mission and their growing emotions. What had started as a purely scientific exploration was now becoming something far more personal, and the women were beginning to realize that their feelings were not just a distraction, they were a fundamental part of their experience on Earth. Vela, Lyra, and Thalassa each faced their own internal struggles as they navigated their relationships with Derek, Ethan, and Alex. For Vela, the challenge was in balancing her role as a leader with her growing affection for Derek. She knew that she had a responsibility to her team and to the mission, but she couldn't deny the connection she felt with him, the way he made her feel seen, understood, and valued in a way she hadn't experienced before. Lyra's conflict was more intellectual in nature. She valued her bond with Ethan, not just for the intellectual stimulation it provided, but for the way it made her feel connected to something larger than herself. Yet she knew that her true identity was something she could never fully reveal to him, and that knowledge weighed heavily on her, creating a sense of distance that she struggled to overcome. For Thalassa, the conflict was rooted in her identity as a warrior. She had always seen herself as strong, disciplined, and self-sufficient, but her connection with Alex was challenging those perceptions. He made her feel vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected, and while she valued the bond they were forming, it also made her question her own understanding of strength and what it meant to truly connect with someone. The women discussed their struggles with each other, sharing their fears and uncertainties in the safety of their shared space aboard the Astris. It was a rare moment of vulnerability for them, a chance to be open and honest about the challenges they were facing. "I didn't expect this," Vela admitted one evening as they gathered in the ship's common area. "I knew we would learn a lot from this mission, but I didn't anticipate how deeply it would affect us. These men, they're not just subjects of study, they're people we're forming real connections with, and it's making me question everything I thought I knew about myself." Lyra nodded in agreement, her expression serious. "I feel the same way. My bond with Ethan is more than just intellectual, it's personal. And yet, I know that there are things I can never share with him, parts of myself that will always be hidden. It's difficult." Thalassa, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "I've always believed that strength comes from within, from discipline and control. But Alex is showing me that strength can also come from connection, from allowing yourself to be vulnerable. It's a lesson I'm still struggling to accept." The room fell silent as the women reflected on their words, each lost in their own thoughts. They had come to Earth with a clear purpose, but now that purpose was being challenged by the complexities of human emotion, by the bonds they were forming with the men they had met. "I think," Vela said finally, breaking the silence, "that we need to allow ourselves to experience these connections fully, even if it complicates our mission. We're here to learn not just about human men, but about ourselves. And maybe these emotions, these relationships are part of that learning process." Lyra and Thalassa nodded, their expressions thoughtful. They knew that Vela was right, but that didn't make the path ahead any easier. They were venturing into uncharted territory, where the lines between duty and desire, between observation and connection, were becoming increasingly blurred. Cultural exchange. As the women embraced their growing relationships with human men, they also began to share more about themselves, albeit within the limits of their human disguises. They introduced the men to aspects of Arendor culture, subtly woven into the fabric of their conversations and activities. These exchanges became a way for the women to connect with the men on a deeper level, to share a part of themselves that went beyond their physical appearance. Vela introduced Derek to a form of meditation that was common on Arendor, a practice that combined physical stillness with mental focus. They spent an afternoon in a secluded park, sitting cross-legged on the grass as Vela guided Derek through the steps of the meditation. She watched as he closed his eyes, his breathing slowing as he followed her instructions. It was a moment of shared tranquility, a connection that went beyond words. Lyra shared with Ethan a game that was popular among the scholars of Arendor, a complex puzzle that required both logical reasoning and creative thinking. They spent hours working on the puzzle together, their minds engaged in a dance of ideas as they tried to solve the intricate challenges. It was a form of intellectual bonding that brought them even closer, deepening their mutual respect and admiration. Thalassa introduced Alex to a form of martial arts practiced on Arendor, a style that emphasized fluidity and balance as much as strength. They sparred together in the gym, their movements synchronized as they practiced the techniques Thalassa had shown him. It was a physical connection that allowed them to communicate without words, a bond forged through shared effort and mutual respect. These cultural exchanges enriched the relationships the women were forming, allowing them to share a part of their true selves with the men they cared about. It was a way of bridging the gap between their worlds, of creating connections that were rooted in understanding and mutual appreciation. A new understanding. As the mission continued, the women of Arendor began to see the world and themselves in a new light. They had come to Earth seeking knowledge, but what they were finding was something far more profound. Their experiences were challenging their preconceptions, forcing them to reevaluate their understanding of strength, beauty, and connection. For Vela, the bond she was forming with Derek was teaching her that strength was not just about control and discipline, it was also about vulnerability, about allowing herself to be seen and understood. Derek had shown her that it was possible to be strong and still need others, that connection was not a weakness, but a source of strength in its own right. Lyra's relationship with Ethan was deepening her appreciation for the intellectual and emotional aspects of connection. She was learning that true understanding required more than just knowledge, it required empathy, a willingness to see the world through someone else's eyes. Ethan had shown her that the mind was not separate from the heart, and that the two could work together to create something beautiful. Thalassa was discovering that physical strength was only one aspect of what it meant to be strong. Through her bond with Alex, she was learning that true strength came from balance, from the ability to connect with others on a physical and emotional level. Alex had shown her that vulnerability was not something to be feared, but something to be embraced as a part of who she was. As the women shared their experiences with each other, they realized that their mission was not just about gathering data, it was about transformation. They were being changed by their time on Earth, by the connections they were forming, and by the lessons they were learning from the men they had met. They knew that their journey was far from over, and that the challenges they were facing were only the beginning, but they also knew that they were stronger for it, that their experiences were shaping them into something new, something more. As they looked ahead to the future, the women of Arendor felt a sense of resolve. They would continue their mission with open hearts and open minds, embracing the connections they were forming and the lessons they were learning. They were not just explorers, they were participants in a journey of discovery, one that would take them to the very heart of what it meant to be human. And as they moved forward, they knew that their experiences on Earth would leave an indelible mark on them, shaping not just their mission, but their very identities. They had come seeking knowledge, but what they were finding was something far more valuable, a deeper understanding of themselves, of humanity, and of the connections that could one day bridge the stars. The forest was still as the Astris prepared for its departure, its cloaking system disengaged to reveal the sleek, shimmering form of the Arendor spacecraft. Inside, the women moved with purpose, their movements precise and practiced, but there was an undercurrent of tension, a quiet unease that had settled over the crew as they faced the final stages of their mission. Captain Vela stood in the command center, her eyes focused on the holographic display that showed their flight path back to Arendor. The journey home was imminent, but her mind was far from the technical details of their return. Instead, she found herself grappling with the weight of the decisions that lay ahead, decisions that would not only affect her and her crew, but also the future of Arendor and Earth. The mission had been a success in many ways. The women had gathered extensive data on human men, learned about their physical characteristics, behaviors, and cultural values. They had observed, interacted, and even formed personal bonds that had gone far beyond the original scope of their assignment. But with that success came complications, emotions, connections, and a deepening understanding of humanity that had blurred the lines between observation and participation. Vela knew that the time had come to present their findings to the High Council of Arendor, to share not just the data they had collected, but the experiences that had profoundly affected each of them. But as she stood there, she realized that their report would be far more than just a scientific analysis. It would be a testimony to the power of connection, of understanding, and of the ways in which their time on Earth had changed them. She turned to face her crew, who had gathered in the command center, their expressions mirroring the mix of anticipation and uncertainty that she felt. Lyra, Thalassa, and the others looked to Vela for guidance, their eyes filled with questions that she knew she couldn't answer alone. "We've completed our mission," Vela began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "We've gathered the data we came for. And we've learned more than we ever expected. But we've also experienced something that goes beyond the parameters of our assignment. We've formed connections with the people of Earth, connections that have challenged our understanding of ourselves and our world." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We've seen the strength, intelligence, and emotional depth of human men. We've learned that they are not so different from us, and that their diversity is a source of strength, not weakness. But we've also discovered that our own perceptions were limited, shaped by our experiences and our society. This mission has opened our eyes to new possibilities, new ways of thinking." Thalassa, who had always been the most focused on the physical aspects of the mission, spoke next. "I've learned that strength isn't just about power or discipline. It's about connection, about understanding the balance between physicality and emotion. The men I've met here have shown me that true strength comes from embracing both aspects, and that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a part of what makes us strong." Vela listened to their words, feeling a sense of pride and camaraderie. These women had grown, not just as scientists and warriors, but as individuals who had come to understand the complexities of human relationships, emotions, and connections. They had been changed by their time on Earth, and she knew that their experiences would have a lasting impact on Arendor. "We need to share our findings with the High Council," Vela continued, her voice firm. "But we must also make them understand that our mission was not just about gathering data, it was about building bridges, about forming connections that could one day lead to a deeper understanding between our worlds. We've seen the potential for collaboration, for mutual respect, and for a future where Arendor and Earth can learn from each other." The women nodded in agreement, their resolve solidifying. They knew that their journey was far from over, that the next steps would be critical in shaping the future of their world and the potential relationship between Arendor and Earth. But they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the knowledge and understanding they had gained. Final farewells. As the time to depart drew closer, the women of Arendor knew that they had one final task to complete, saying goodbye to the men who had become an integral part of their mission, and who had touched their hearts in ways they hadn't expected. For Vela, this meant facing Derek one last time. They had grown close over the weeks, their bond deepening with each shared experience, each conversation that revealed more of their true selves. Vela knew that her departure would be difficult, not just for him, but for herself as well. But she also knew that she couldn't stay, that her duty to her people, and the mission, required her to return to Arendor. They met in the park where they had meditated together, the same place where Vela had first felt the stirrings of something deeper than mere curiosity. The air was cool, the early morning mist clinging to the grass and trees, creating an atmosphere that was both peaceful and poignant. Derek was already there when Vela arrived, his hands in his pockets, his expression thoughtful as he watched the sun rise over the horizon. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes, as if he already knew what she was about to say. "Val," he greeted her, his voice warm but tinged with something more. "I'm glad you came." Vela smiled in return, though her heart was heavy. "I couldn't leave without seeing you one last time." Derek nodded, his gaze searching hers. "So this is goodbye." Vela took a deep breath, the words catching in her throat. "Yes," she said softly. "I have to leave. There are things I need to take care of, responsibilities I can't ignore." Derek looked down at the ground, his jaw tightening. "I had a feeling this was coming, but it doesn't make it any easier." Vela reached out, placing a hand on his arm, feeling the warmth of his skin through the fabric of his jacket. "I wish things were different," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "I wish I could stay. but my path is leading me elsewhere. Derek looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and understanding. I get it. You've got your own life, your own things to deal with. But I'm going to miss you, Val. I have really come to care about you. Vela's heart ached at his words, the depth of his feelings mirrored in her own. I care about you too, Derek, more than I ever expected. You've shown me a side of myself that I didn't even know existed, and for that, I'm grateful. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their unspoken emotions hanging between them. Then, slowly, Derek reached out and pulled Vela into a gentle embrace, holding her close as if trying to memorize the feel of her in his arms. Vela closed her eyes, savoring the warmth of his touch, the steady beat of his heart against her own. She knew that this would be their last moment together, and she wanted to hold on to it for as long as she could. I'll never forget you, Derek whispered, his voice filled with emotion. No matter where you go or what you do, you'll always have a place in my heart. Vela felt a tear slip down her cheek, and she tightened her hold on him, not wanting to let go. I'll never forget you either, she whispered back. Thank you, Derek. For everything. With a final squeeze, Derek released her, stepping back to look into her eyes one last time. Goodbye, Val. Take care of yourself. Goodbye, Derek, Vela replied, her voice breaking slightly. I will. She turned and walked away, her steps slow and heavy, each one taking her further from the man who had come to mean so much to her. She didn't look back, knowing that if she did, she might not have the strength to leave. But as she walked, she carried the memory of him with her, a memory that would stay with her long after she had returned to Arindor. For Lyra, the farewell was equally difficult. She met Ethan at the university, the place where their intellectual connection had first sparked. They had spent countless hours discussing ideas, challenging each other's perspectives, and building a bond that went far beyond academic curiosity. But now, as Lyra faced the reality of her departure, she realized just how much she had come to care for him. They sat together in Ethan's office, the quiet hum of the campus surrounding them. Ethan looked at Lyra with a mix of confusion and concern, sensing that something was wrong. Lila, what's going on? He asked, his brow furrowed. You've been distant lately, and now you're telling me you have to leave? What's happening? Lyra struggled to find the words, her mind racing with the conflict between her duty to her mission and her feelings for Ethan. I have to go, Ethan, she said finally, her voice trembling. There are things in my life that I need to take care of, things I can't ignore. I wish I could stay, but it's not possible. Ethan's expression softened, a flicker of understanding passing through his eyes. You're not telling me everything, are you? Lyra looked away, unable to meet his gaze. No, I'm not. And I'm sorry for that. But there are things I can't explain, things I can't share with you. Ethan reached out, gently tilting her chin so that she would look at him. I don't need to know everything, Lila. I just need to know that what we have, was real. Lyra felt a tear slip down her cheek as she nodded. It was real, Ethan. It still is. But I have to go. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to come back. Ethan's grip on her chin tightened slightly, his eyes searching hers for answers that she couldn't give. I don't want you to go, Lila. But if you have to, then I want you to know that I'll be here, waiting, if you ever decide to come back. Lyra's heart ached at his words, the depth of his feelings mirrored in her own. Thank you, Ethan, she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Thank you for everything. They embraced, their connection deeper and more profound than any words could express. And as Lyra walked away, leaving Ethan and the life they had begun to build together, she knew that she would carry the memory of him with her, always a memory that would shape her understanding of connection, of intellect, and of love. Thalassa's farewell to Alex was equally poignant. They met at the gym, the place where their bond had first formed through shared physical challenges and mutual respect. Thalassa had always valued strength, but Alex had shown her that true strength came from the balance between body and heart, between discipline and vulnerability. As they stood together in the quiet gym, the weights and mats surrounding them like silent witnesses to their journey, Thalassa struggled to find the words to express what she was feeling. I have to leave, Alex, she said finally, her voice steady but filled with emotion. There are things in my life that I need to take care of, things that I can't ignore. Alex looked at her, his expression unreadable. You're leaving? Just like that? Thalassa nodded, her heart heavy. Yes, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to come back. Alex was silent for a moment, his eyes searching hers. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. I don't want you to go, Tessa, he said quietly. But I understand if you have to. Just know that you've made a difference in my life. You've shown me what it means to be truly strong. Thalassa felt a tear slip down her cheek as she squeezed his hand. You've shown me the same, Alex. I've learned so much from you, more than I ever expected, and I'll never forget you. They embraced, the connection between them deep and unspoken. And as Thalassa walked away, leaving Alex and the life they had begun to build together, she knew that she would carry the memory of him with her, always a memory that would shape her understanding of strength, of connection, and of what it truly meant to be strong. A new era begins. The journey back to Arindor was quiet, the women lost in their thoughts as the Astris hurtled through space, leaving Earth far behind. They had completed their mission, but each of them knew that they were returning home as different people, changed by their experiences, by the connections they had formed, and by the emotions they had felt. As they approached Arindor, the women gathered in the command center, their expressions a mix of anticipation and reflection. The planet loomed large in the viewport, its surface shimmering with the familiar hues of their home. But as they prepared to land, they knew that Arindor would never be the same for them. Vila stood at the helm, her gaze focused on the planet below. She knew that the High Council would be waiting for their report, eager to hear about the success of the mission. But she also knew that their report would be more than just a collection of data. It would be a testimony to the power of connection, of understanding, and of the ways in which their time on Earth had changed them. As the ship touched down on Arindor, the women disembarked, their steps steady but filled with a sense of purpose. They knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, that the High Council might not fully understand the significance of what they had experienced. But they were ready to face whatever came their way, armed with the knowledge and understanding they had gained. The council chamber was filled with light as the women entered, the walls reflecting the glow of the crystal dome above. The High Council members, seated in their usual places, watched as Vela and her team approached, their expressions curious and expectant. Welcome back, the matriarch, Serafina greeted them, her voice filled with warmth and authority. We have been eagerly awaiting your return. Tell us, what have you learned? Vela took a deep breath, her mind racing with the weight of the information they were about to share. She knew that this was a pivotal moment, one that would shape the future of Arindor and its relationship with Earth. We have learned much, Vela began, her voice steady. The men of Earth are strong, intelligent, and diverse in ways that we had not fully understood before. They value physical strength, but they also value emotional connection, intellect, and mutual respect. Their diversity is a source of strength, and we have much to learn from them. The council members listened intently, their expressions thoughtful as Vila continued. She spoke of the connections they had formed, the emotions they had experienced, and the ways in which their time on Earth had challenged their understanding of strength, beauty, and connection. When she finished, the chamber was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of contemplation and curiosity. Finally, Serafina spoke, her voice calm but filled with a sense of gravity. Your mission has been a success in ways that we did not anticipate. You have brought back not just knowledge but understanding, a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. This knowledge will shape the future of Arindor, and it will guide us as we consider the possibilities of a relationship with Earth. Vila nodded, her heart filled with a sense of accomplishment and resolve. She knew that their journey was far from over, that the challenges ahead would be significant, but she also knew that they were ready to face those challenges, armed with the knowledge and understanding they had gained. As the council chamber filled with light, the women of Arindor felt a sense of peace, a sense of connection that transcended the boundaries of their world. They had come to Earth seeking knowledge, but what they had found was something far more valuable, a deeper understanding of themselves, of humanity, and of the connections that could one day bridge the stars. And as they looked ahead to the future, they knew that a new era was beginning, an era of understanding, of connection, and of the potential for a brighter, more connected universe.